Most people believe the day begins when the sun rises. They are wrong. There is a specific frequency, a hidden window in the fabric of time that the elite, the stoics, and the desperate have used for centuries to rewrite their destinies. You feel it, don't you? That nagging sense that you are running a race where the finish line keeps moving. What if I told you that your struggle isn't a lack of effort, but a lack of stolen time? There was once a man buried under the weight of debt and a collapsing spirit who discovered a forgotten ritual within the ink-black hours of the morning. It wasn't about hustle. It was about an ancient psychological loophole. But before we reveal how he climbed out of the abyss, you must understand that this path is treacherous. Especially when we reach the fifth pillar of this habit, the ritual of the third watch. It is the most dangerous part of this secret, and without it, the rest of these hours are merely a slow crawl toward exhaustion. Chapter 1. The Alchemy of Silence. In the halls of dark academia, we speak of alchemy, the process of turning lead into gold. For the poor man, his lead was the noise of the world. At 5 a.m., the collective consciousness of the city is dormant. The will of others is not yet pressing against your soul. Why does this matter? Because willpower is a finite resource, a candle that burns lower with every email, every notification, every demand. By waking at 5, you are not just early. You are operating in a vacuum of influence. But silence is a mirror. And for our protagonist, the silence was deafening because it forced him to face a terrifying biological reality he had been ignoring for years. Do you know what happens to your brain when you force it to wake before the world demands it? Chapter 2. The Biology of the Ghost Hour. Neurobiology tells us that in the pre-dawn hours, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and decision-making, is in a unique state of theta flux. It is the bridge between the dreaming mind and the waking ego. The poor man realized that his poverty was a result of reactive living. He spent his days responding to others. But at 5 a.m., he was the architect. He discovered that dopamine, the chemical of pursuit, is at its highest purity when it hasn't been diluted by the cheap thrills of social media or morning news. He began to treat this hour as a sacred laboratory. But as he sharpened his mind, he realized that a sharp blade is useless if the hand holding it is shaking. What was the one specific action he took during this hour that physically rewired his nervous system for wealth? Chapter 3. The Library of the Unconscious. He didn't check his phone. He didn't look at his bills. He stepped into his library of the unconscious. In the dark academia tradition, we prioritize the pursuit of dead knowledge, the wisdom of those who are no longer here to speak. While his competitors were sleeping, he was in a dialogue with Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. He realized that poverty is often just a lack of high-quality metaphors. He began to see his struggles not as failures, but as a Socratic trial. This shifted his psychology from a victim of circumstance to a student of fate. But reading wasn't enough. He needed to bleed onto the page. If reading is the intake, what is the output that separates the successful from the merely busy? Chapter 4. The Great Theft. Every morning he practiced what philosophers call the Great Theft. He stole an hour from his future self's fatigue and gave it to his present self's ambition. He began to write, not to-do lists, but shadow scripts, He wrote down exactly how the world would try to break him that day and how he would remain unmoved. By the time the sun rose at 7 a.m., he had already lived through the battles of the day and won them in his mind. This is why he began to move with a terrifying level of calm. People noticed. Opportunities appeared. But there was one final habit, the one I warned you about, that nearly broke him before it made him. Are you ready to face the ritual of the third watch? Chapter 5. The Ritual of the Third Watch. This is the secret point number 5. The most misunderstood pillar of the 5 a.m. habit. It is not about productivity. It is about confrontation. In the ancient world, the third watch was the time of deepest darkness. For the poor man, this was the moment he stopped running from his shadows. He used the final 15 minutes of his 5 a.m. hour to sit in total darkness, no books, no pens, no light, and ask himself, what am I lying to myself about? This is the dangerous part because most people cannot handle the answer. But once he faced his lies, his laziness, his fear of success, his resentment, the poverty in his bank account had no choice but to vanish because the poverty in his character had been incinerated. He didn't become rich because he worked harder. He became rich because he became a person who was no longer afraid of the dark. The final verdict. The secret of 5 a.m. isn't about beating the clock. It's about beating the version of yourself that wants to stay comfortable. The poor man changed his life not because he found more time, but because he found himself in the silence. The question is, will you meet yourself at 5 a.m. tomorrow? Or are you too afraid of what you'll find in the shadows? The ink is dry. The door is open. The rest is up to you.